This is perhaps one of my favorite gospel passages to pray with, especially during Lent as we approach Easter. In this story from the gospel, Jesus is in the temple area again near Mount Olivet, and the Pharisees and scribes bring before Jesus this woman who is caught in the very act of adultery. Now, I can't imagine how utterly humiliating this must have been for this woman. She's caught in the action of adultery. She's then dragged from the place where she's caught in her sin. She's dragged and she's thrown at the feet of Jesus. And not only is she caught in this really kind of embarrassing and vulnerable state of this particular sin, but she's then thrown at Jesus' feet because the Pharisees and scribes are trying to test him. And they throw her at his feet and they say to Jesus, "What say you?" The law of Moses says that we are to stone her to death because of the sin that she was caught in. She was caught in the very act itself. What do you think we should do? And Jesus said, "Let the first one among you, without sin, cast the first stone." They're standing there with rocks and stones in their hands, and Jesus bends on the earth, and he begins to write in the sand. There's no record of what he wrote. Some theorize that he perhaps wrote the list of sins of those people who are about ready to stone the woman. Others theorize that he just merely doodled. Doesn't matter what he wrote. Because as he stands up from writing in the clay, he realizes that while he was bent over, the crowds dropped their stones and left. And he looks at the woman and he says, "Has no one stayed to condemn you?" "No one, sir. They've all left." And he responds to her, "Then neither do I. Go and sin no more." You see, this is how Jesus calls us to himself. He doesn't dismiss our sin, nor does he allow our sin to crush us. But he stands in the middle of those two extremes. Jesus bends down to communicate to us that I have no right to condemn you because I am your fellow sinner. But he bends down into the clay of the earth. Here he is, the author of all life. The master and creator of the universe stands here before this woman caught in the very act of adultery. He sees her standing there naked, in all of her shame, in all of her guilt, in all of her humiliation and sinfulness. And he calls her to himself. After the rest drop their stones and run away, he calls her to himself by giving her that lasting command. "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." It's the eradication of sin in our lives that allow us to experience unity with God. It's the lack of sin in our lives. It's our repentance from sin, our abandonment of the life of sin, and surrender into God's hands that allow us to experience union with him. This is the call of Jesus. Not to show up, but to allow him to see me vulnerable for everything that I am. Allow him to see my guilt, my shame, my embarrassment. Allow him to see my goodness, my strengths, my joys. Allow him to see my struggles and my victories. Allow him to see who I am for who I am. Because the words that he speaks to me are words of mercy. The words that he speaks to me are words of repentance. The words that he speaks to me are as an invitation and a call to turn my back on sin, to turn my face to him, to embrace him, and to come to him.